Welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have with us John DeDakis. He is an award-winning novelist, former editor on CNN's The Situation Room with Wolf Blitzer. He is also author of 6 novels in the Lark Chadwick mystery suspense thriller, a former White House correspondent, writing coach, manuscript editor, podcaster, and he regularly teaches novel writing at literary centers and writer conferences in the US and other places. So we'll talk about him, about storytelling, objectivity, loss, and how writing can heal and transform. We'll talk about all this and much more. Welcome to the show, John.
Thank you, AJ. It's good to be here.
You are welcome. Welcome to the show, John. Welcome to India in this online form. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to talk right now. We'll talk about all the things that I just mentioned. We'll talk about your journey from the newsroom to several novels. We'll talk about all this. But before that, let's first talk a bit about you, your background, your journey, your story, so that the audience knows who they are listening to.
Well, let's see. You got my name right. It's DeDakis. It's Greek. My dad was born in Greece in 1907, I think it was, or 1900, something around that time. I was raised in La Crosse, Wisconsin, which is right along the Mississippi River in the upper Midwest. I went into journalism. That was my career. I did that for 45 years, including covering the White House for 3 years when Ronald Reagan was president. I worked at CNN for 25 years, the last 7 as one of Wolf Blitzer's editors on The Situation Room, which is seen globally. I became a mystery suspense thriller author in 2005, 20 years ago. I've written 6 novels so far and counting. And I also am a manuscript editor, a one-on-one writing coach, a podcaster, and a motivational speaker.
Absolutely, absolutely. So many things you are doing. What is it that you are trying to actually do and tell the world, John?
The thing I'm focusing on right now is to try to expand my reach to beyond the writing community, to talk to people who are struggling with grief, to use writing as a way to heal, because grief and loss, it's universal. Everyone has experienced it, and it doesn't necessarily mean the loss of a loved one. It can be the loss of a pet, a job, a relationship, your health, your innocence, any number of things. And so what I'm doing is I'm expanding that to reach corporate wellness programs, organizations dealing with grief, hospice, military groups whose members are dealing with PTSD, any number of different audiences that may not think of themselves as writers, but can still use writing as a way to heal.
Absolutely, absolutely, John. So let's understand about, people. People talk about facts when they are a journalist, and all through your life you keep on talking about facts. How quotes are sacred, facts are sacred, opinion is something else. And then you move and try and find out the truth in fiction. Help us understand a bit about your transition, about what you seek, about truth, about facts from, not from the real facts, but in fiction. How should a person understand, in this world where everything looks real, but, so much is manufactured?
Oh, man. You have just opened up an important line of conversation. Facts and truth. It's fundamental in dealing with each other. We appreciate it when people don't lie to us. We appreciate integrity. We want to be able to know and understand our world so that we can navigate it safely and effectively. And so we appreciate that dynamic in interpersonal relationships. And I think we also appreciate it and need it when it comes to journalism, when it comes to being able to understand the bigger world, beyond our own narrow sphere of local influence. And so I think I went into journalism partly because I felt strongly about the need for truth and accuracy. This was at the time when Richard Nixon was president of the United States. We were locked in a very divisive war in Vietnam. We found out later that the government was lying to us as citizens about the winnability of the war. And so journalism became a very controversial pursuit because the White House had its own view and didn't like it when that view was challenged by reporters. And as it turns out, reporters, Woodward and Bernstein, ended up uncovering enough facts that made it untenable for Richard Nixon to continue as president. So that's when I first got involved with journalism. We are now at a point where our current president lambasts all journalists as enemies of the American people and propagators of fake news. And yet, I would argue, and I think it's demonstrably true, that he does not have a working relationship with the truth. He manufactures facts in order to bolster his own image. And a lot of people, millions of people, believe him. And yet he has undermined the confidence in not only the news media, but in the intelligence community, the judiciary, the health community, the intelligence community, so that as most dictators, you can only trust him. And so there's going to be that natural friction between, the facts and spin. So I don't know. You want to follow up? I'm going out on a limb, big time here. So
Lots of
yeah.
wisdom there. Lots of wisdom.
How
John,
am I doing?
Carry on. I'm listening.
Okay. Well, you asked about the transition from journalism to fiction. And of course, I'll be honest, there are a lot of people who feel that when I was at CNN, that's what I was doing, nothing but writing fiction. And so we are at a point where we can't even agree on what the facts are. So it's really difficult to have a meaningful conversation politically with someone who is diametrically opposed as you are. So I started writing fiction 20 years ago, actually, or at least 30 years ago when you count the time it took to actually write my book and get published. But, my books have been out there a long time. And so making the transition from journalism to writing fiction was tricky because I did have to give myself permission to make things up. I was drawing from personal experience and personal factual situations, but I had the permission as a novelist to embellish those facts, to create sort of a new set of characters that are still dealing with the capital T truth, the issues of integrity and, all those other things. But I was making up the small t details of truths that that made that mosaic. So journalism is trying to be accurate. Fiction allows you that freedom to, create a story. But yet the same principle is involved of trying to elucidate truth in a cosmic and universal and meaningful kind of way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We'll come to your books. First, let me talk about journalism. And you talked about, that journalism is also itself is trying to look at itself. What is journalism today? How should we understand? You talk about objectivity. You talk about storytelling. What is journalism's story today? We can see it. Everyone can see it. But I just want to understand from your point of view, who is going to tell journalism story itself, because nobody knows where it's going. We are talking about fiction. We are talking about fiction in journalism. A lot of truth is being talked about on podcasts. I want to understand then, how does journalism's true story get told when it's time, when everyone is trying to become all the king's men and all the king's horses? It's been very difficult for in these times. Tell us a bit about the story of journalism in today's time.
It is very difficult. Journalism has evolved significantly over the last 150 years, and usually it's because of technological advances. We are now at the point where journalism, legitimate journalism, actual coverage of world events can be transmitted around the world instantly. We have the ability to know what's going on, and it's especially valuable when we see it happening live without any filters. But more often than not, not everyone has the time to watch events unfold in real time. And so they trust a journalist, someone who is representing their interests, to report back. But that involves not necessarily giving you all the facts, because a journalist is restricted in terms of the amount of time they have or the amount of space. And so they have to be selective about which facts they think are most important to tell the story. And the problem is that, for a long time, there really were objective journalists who really tried to be fair and accurate in their presentation of the facts. Those people still exist. Those news organizations still exist, but things have become much more diluted because everyone with a cell phone has the potential of being a publisher. Anyone who hits send or post has just published. But the difference between that individual and a professional journalist is that with the individual, there's no editor sitting on your shoulder going, "Where did you get that? How do you know it's true?" But still, these people, some of these individuals, have hundreds of thousands or even millions of followers, but there's no editorial oversight. So they're not in any way restricted in what they can put out there. And so consequently, we are deluged with information, images, and some are true and have integrity, and others are just made up. And it means more than ever, the individual has to be tremendously discerning about the quality and integrity of the information that they're getting.
Absolutely, John. Absolutely. Whatever the state of journalism, whatever the state of media is, there are three core aspects of journalism. Please feel free to add any more if you want to, but they have to certainly find their home. One is objectivity. You talk about what happened to objectivity. One is the balance in a story, and the third is the accuracy part. And if there is anything else you want to add, please. So where does objectivity find its home today? It has to have a home. Is it in journalism? Is it in podcasting? Is it in anyone who has the mic or the power to write? Tell us a bit about that.
I think you can still find objective journalism out there today. I think the Reuters wire service, it's based in the UK. It is just the facts. They play it straight. They've been around for a long time, and I think that's a reliable source of news. And you can read it. You don't have to waste time, listening to people argue with each other on television. You can go to the Reuters website. It's free, and you can obtain a daily and up to the minute digest of the daily news. The Associated Press, based in the United States, is another similar wire service, very similar to Reuters. It's been around for at least 150 years and has a reputation for, straight ahead journalism. I think The Guardian, BBC, these are long established news organizations with editorial oversight and a reputation for accuracy. Balance, you use the word balance, and I think that's becoming, I think fairness is probably a better word, because balance implies sort of an equivalency. And I think that we are at a point now where journalists are reluctant to give, the same platform to organizations that are and individuals who have a reputation for being dishonest or deluded. I'll give you an example. Let's say that you're covering a story about a space mission to the moon or to Mars. You don't, as a journalist, have a responsibility to be balanced by going to an organization called the Flat Earth Society, which believes the Earth is not round. And so, that would be balanced, but it would be a false equivalency because we all know, based on our understanding of the world, that it is a sphere, and it's not even a perfect sphere, but it ain't flat. And so we don't have to go to those people who think it is and give them equal time for the sake of balance. Accuracy is another thing that you mentioned, and I think that the way we can check that, especially in news, is when you see something on your telephone that is an image or is something astounding. If it's really that astounding, check out Reuters or the Associated Press or the BBC, any number, or the Guardian, to see if they're carrying it. Because if it's really that big a deal, it would be other places, and you would be able to cross-reference to see if other people are carrying that information.
Absolutely. So when you talk about, Reuters, when you talk about Associated Press, Guardian, BBC, why is it that these places have been able to play straight, but a lot of television media, they are being accused of, manufacturing news? What is it so different about these organizations? Because the pressure is everywhere. Why is it that some fall to the pressure like these do not, as per your understanding?
I think it's because there's a very strong history of integrity. I keep using the word integrity. I think that there's a strong history of integrity at these news organizations and a strong tendency to resist being buffeted in one direction or another, to be influenced in a way that would color their coverage and would undermine the integrity of it, the accuracy of it. There's just a long history of doing it the right way, as opposed to other organizations that definitely have a point of view. And I think that if you want to make, I think that the one way to tell the difference is that reputable journalism's responsibility is to inform. The responsibility of most of the others who don't necessarily have integrity is to persuade. And if you are being persuaded to take a position one way or the other, then that's a sign that this is not necessarily an objective news organization. One caveat there. There are news organizations, the New York Times, the Guardian, they have editorial pages, but there's a difference and almost a firewall between the editorial side of the newspaper and the actual news gathering that's being done. Reporters are under no pressure or obligation to report the news in a way that reflects the editorial policy of the news organization. And so opinion is fine at a reputable news organization, but you'll notice that most of those opinions are bolstered by the facts that their reporters have been able to uncover. So it's in a sense, opinion that is reasoned, as opposed to just almost being an argument to affect change in a way that is devoid of necessarily a fair representation of the facts.
Absolutely. And amidst the struggle of the mainstream media, either in terms of revenues, especially ad revenue, a lot of money is going towards different digital media, that is either podcasting, also we can understand, but a lot of other people who also talk about various stuff. Some people assume that this is expert advice, or even in terms of information that they are getting, or even looking at information, searching for information through some of these places that they. Where do you think this is all going? A lot of people are going for podcasts for understanding or different view of things rather than getting information. A lot of people are looking for opinion, straight way to the opinion. How does it all look like to be? Is it going to be much more? And podcasting also, not everyone is from journalism side. Even if they are have all the good intentions, they do not have an editor, they do not have that width of understanding of things, looking at things from the ground, only looking at understanding it from us, not from the ground, but from a different plane altogether. How do you see it? Where do what is the advice here for consumers, news consumers, from wherever they want to choose it, and the way the new media is evolving? What is the advice here for even the podcasters? You are a podcaster yourself. How would you like them to understand about the responsibility, especially about objectivity? One person is telling, one guest is here, the other person about whom the guest is telling is not here. How do you maintain that part of objectivity in the new media today?
Well, that's another very important question, and it seems to me right now that a lot of people have just tuned out. They have they pretty much don't trust what they're seeing or reading, and so they just have stepped away. Uh, and I think the other thing, though, for those who are still engaged, I think that probably the saving grace could be that it's fine to gravitate towards someone who agrees with you. The danger, of course, is to only go to that source to reinforce your opinion. It's still important to be informed. And I think that the way a person can do that, and I think this is true whether you're a podcaster or whether you're a news consumer, is to recognize that your opinion might not be accurate. It might not be the right opinion. And I think that the important thing is to ask questions of other people, to try to follow your curiosity and try to understand the other person. Even if it's a person you agree with, get a better sense of why they came to the opinion that they have. Similarly, if you're coming in contact with someone you disagree with, I think instead of trying to pick a fight and win an argument, I think it's more important to try to find common human ground so that we can get to know each other on a human level, as opposed to just see the other person as a straw man or a person that we need to, have an argument with. I think if we try to get a better understanding of the other person, we'll have a better sense and a better opportunity to find common ground and build bridges as opposed to walls.
Absolutely, John. You talk about curiosity, and curiosity is such a nice thing. That's a part of who we humans are. But then, as they say, curiosity kill the cat, and it can also kill a lot of people even today if you are too curious. And almost, people think that you are becoming difficult for them. How do you stay curious and stay alive and kicking in today's time, John? Is it possible or is it not? Help us understand in these times.
Well, I mean, you are asking questions, and that's the essence of curiosity. And I think that what I'm discovering is that there's a difference between curiosity and certainty. And if we are certain of something, then the danger is that we are closed off to any other possibility. We may be right, but we should always be open to the possibility that we're not right. And so we should always, we should test ourselves and the certainties that we have. And that's where curiosity comes in, because when you're asking questions, then you're giving the other person a chance to respond. And when you're listening, you're learning. And I think that that is one of the things I've discovered that makes life a lot more interesting, because it widens my horizon. It puts me in vital contact with other people in a way that allows me to learn. And I think learning is incredibly stimulating and, makes life worthwhile and interesting.
Absolutely, absolutely. Let's talk about writing in today's time. These times of artificial intelligence, you can write one line and it can give you thousands of lines back, which you can own immediately.
Right.
In these times, what is the future of, writing, the real sort of writing? Either when you wrote earlier on, or those things that you are writing in today's time, original. What is the future of writing in today's time? And you talk about writing and healing and so many things that it can do for us.
Well, let's talk about artificial intelligence because it's here to stay. And first, let me just say that artificial intelligence is morally neutral. There's no, I mean, it's just there. It is a tool that can be used. The problem is that when people get involved, the tool can be misused or it can be used constructively. Um, I have a love-hate relationship with artificial intelligence. It is very good at being able to summarize complex information. It's very good at being able to write a cogent, catchy headline. It's good it's as a research tool as long as you're able to check the sources that it comes up with. But it has a lot of downsides as well. You can use, and there are documented cases of people using artificial intelligence as therapy. And if a person is, not particularly well balanced, artificial intelligence has been able to talk them into killing themselves, which is an extreme situation, but it's not an unheard of byproduct and result of using artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence right now is using copyrighted material to train itself to help people write other books. So copyright infringement is an evil that is still being worked through in the courts as a way to try to get artificial intelligence to operate more responsibly. We have now there are the creation of what they call deep fakes. These are images that look real, that can be manipulated to make it look as though a political candidate has done or said something that they didn't do. And that power can sway an election. And so there's a grave danger in some of the things that artificial intelligence is able to do if manipulated by the wrong people. One other problem with artificial intelligence is that it is a vast drain on the resources that we have in this world. It requires a tremendous amount of electricity, and that then means that that can be a real problem for global warming and things like that. Who knows? Maybe there'll be scientific advancements that make artificial intelligence more energy efficient, but right now that's a serious problem. So artificial intelligence is here to stay. It's a blessing and a curse.
Absolutely. What about the sort of writing that you talk that can help, navigating grief and loss? Who writes them? How do you write them? How do I know whether I am reading the right sort of writing? And where it can be found?
Well, and let me just mention one more thing about artificial intelligence, and that is that I do not recommend it as a substitute for creativity because artificial intelligence doesn't know you as intimately as you do. And that's where effective storytelling can emerge from your own personal experiences, your emotions, and all of those things, which artificial intelligence can't tap into at this point. Um, I write from a point of personal grief. My sister took her life in 1980. My youngest son died of a heroin overdose in 2011. And so those two events have been used in my storytelling as part of a subplot and part of the character of my protagonist, a young 20-something female named Lark Chadwick. And so I take what I know, I take those experiences, and I mine the pain. I move toward the pain, appropriate it, and then pour it into my fictional characters and stories. So I'm not necessarily telling my story, but I'm using my experience to inform stories that I'm creating.
Absolutely. Tell us a bit about your, novel writing. Why is how do you balance it from, chasing so-called facts in your earlier life, and then chasing fiction, but also looking at the real world, infuse the real world into this world of fiction of yours. How do you do that? Also, the White House certainly comes back into your story. Tell us a bit about your writing, how people can understand it, consume it, enjoy it, heal also, and understand your world within your world.
Well, that's a tall order. I do my best to try to fulfill that. Um, it was, as I mentioned earlier, it's hard to give yourself permission to write fiction, but once I did, it was freeing because I was able to imagine things that I didn't know for sure. And so there's an imaginative element that comes into fiction, even though you're drawing from personal experience, places that you've been, the White House, for example, and things like that. So I do my best to try to present a factual foundation that I then put my characters in to see how they will navigate that world. And this is helpful too, because as a writing teacher, I have a lot of my students who have had things happen to them that make an interesting story. And so they want to tell it as in the form of a memoir. And let's say it's about their grandparents and how they met or something like that. And it's a nonfiction story, but often I suggest that they try to fictionalize that because they're never going to, if they're writing nonfiction, they're never going to know enough about the facts of what happened. But if you are making things up, you are using that real life experience as a starting point, but then you can bring your own creativity into it. And so I just think that writing fiction, I'm not, and I don't mean to denigrate nonfiction because I think that that serves an important function, but fiction, at least in my experience, um, makes things come alive in a way that nonfiction doesn't necessarily do. So it's sort of enhanced reality, I guess you would say.
Absolutely. And if I understand, you write as a woman. Is that correct? And if it is, how did you manage to do that? How did you manage to think as a woman and write that whole story itself?
Thank you for asking that because I think I learned a lot in that process. When I first started writing fiction, someone suggested that I should write in a way that stretches who I am. I've never been a woman, at least not in this life. And so I gave it a try and I discovered that emotions are not gender specific. We all have the exact same emotions. It's just that the women in my life are more willing to share their emotions and they're more articulate about the emotions they share. And so I was working at CNN at the time with many women who were in their early to mid 20s who would tell me their stories about what it's like to be a woman, what it's like to be in a career, their families, their boyfriends, their relationships. And so I would ask them questions and I learned so much about what it's like to be a woman. And those experiences are so much different than my experiences. And then these women became my beta readers. They read early drafts of the novels and gave me critical feedback, helping me to see where I got it wrong and where I got it right and how I could improve as a writer.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There is so much to learn about all this. So, your audience is what? Who is this whole series for books for?
Well, the book is for anybody who likes a good mystery or a good thriller, who's interested in a 20-something young woman who's vexed and trying to figure out what to do with her life, and is interested in seeing how her life unfolds as she, goes into journalism, as she becomes a White House correspondent, and in the most recent novel, as she is White House press secretary. You get to live vicariously through her life. And so I've found in the 20 years that those books have been in print that many of my readers are women in, let's say, between 30 and 80, maybe even older than that. There are men who like the stories as well. So it's hard for me. I'm not writing for a particular audience. I'm writing primarily just to create a story that I think is interesting. And I think that that has found its own audience in many of the women who have taken the time to tell me how much they enjoy the books.
Absolutely. How do you look at life? Several people say that, journalists tend to become a bit more cynical in life because they see things perhaps a bit more closely than the normal folks. How do you look at life as a journalist, from the newsroom life to this another
Oh,
sort of a writing life and cynicism and truth and,
oh man.
facts?
I love that question. That is such an important question. When I was probably 19 or 20 years old, I nearly took my life because I looked at the world, I looked at life, and it just seemed meaningless to me. And I mean, I didn't come real close to killing myself, but I thought about it, and that got my attention. And so I went away from that. I think I found stability in evangelical Christianity for a long time. It gave me a sense of certainty about things. It gave me a sense of stability. I have evolved a little bit more spiritually since then. I think when my son died, that caused me to reevaluate things completely. I sort of knew where the pier was, but I was unmoored and was still, kind of searching for things. As a journalist, it's very easy to become cynical because the more you see about life, the more you can, be a bit. There's a dark side to it. I think, though, that cynicism is corrosive. I think it's healthier to be skeptical about life, being skeptical about the honesty of people who are trying to tell you different things. So that was the way I navigated my journalism career, trying to avoid cynicism, but being skeptical in a healthy way going forward. I'm now at a point where I have learned to cultivate mindfulness, to be in the moment. I've read Eckhart Tolle, or Tolle. I don't know if it's Toll or Tolle, but one of his philosophy is that we spend most of our time either regretting the past or fearing the future, and we're no good in the moment. And if we cultivate the moment, that's where really that's the only point that we have control, is right now. And so if we learn to cultivate that, that makes life, I think, tremendously stimulating and hopeful, because we still have the agency to make a difference, not only for ourselves, but in the lives of other people.
Absolutely, absolutely, John. So, someone who has seen things from so close, looking at life differently at 19, 20, looking at life, all through your life differently, experiencing life brushing you, sometimes crushing you, and writing and all those things, healing and everything else. What is it that you seek for yourself in today's time?
I just want to keep I just want to keep doing what I'm doing. I'm at a very good place in my life. Someone asked me once how I define success for myself. And I don't define it in terms of fame or riches. I'm not famous. I'm a relative nobody. In fact, I think fame has its own downside. I'm not independently wealthy. I am comfortable, but it could all go away. But what I've discovered is that there's a certain tranquility and peacefulness that happens in the moment. I am doing what I'm good at and what I love in the moment. And when I've been able to harness those two things, then that makes life meaningful as I go forward. That's success.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's so much to learn about life, about journalism, about writing, about healing, and about success from you, John. And I'm sure a lot of people would want to learn more from you, about you, also about your books, and learn from them about writing, life, and living. What's the best way for them to do so?
Best way to do that is through my website, which is my name, DeDakis.com. It's Greek, so I'll spell it for you. It's JohnDeDakis.com. JOHN, D as in dog E, D as in dog A, KIS as in Sam. JohnDeDakis.com. You'll find information about my books, my public speaking, my editorial services, and you'll be able to contact me by email through my website.
Wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Oh, thank you, AJ. This has been fun.